Hello everyone, I'm Zoe. So this week I did my very first open mic stand-up performance. I am very excited about that. So in this video, I am going to share with you my very first stand-up, and it's also my second time going to this comedy class. So I guess I will start sharing my comedy class experience and then share my open mic experience. I will attach my very first open mic performance at the end of this video. So let's get started. So basically I signed up for this comedy class here in Toronto. It's a 6 or 7 weeks class. Last Tuesday was my first class. This Tuesday, it was my second class. And after the class, I did that open mic thing. Yeah, maybe you may ask, why did you go to this comedy class? It was because I was rewatching the video, like the last video on my Toronto fitness routine. At the end of the video, I shared my personal story of applying for and getting rejected by a Pilates fitness studio's front desk position. I was rewatching that part. I thought it was funny. And by the way, in the end, I also shared my experience getting rejected by all 3 Lululemon stores here in Toronto. I thought I had a funny delivery with a lot of humor. That really made me think, what is humor? What makes a good humor? I did some research and I got to know that humor usually comes from conflicts and contrasts. And then I thought, oh, okay, that probably works for me because like my life has a lot of conflicts and contrasts. I think maybe humor is a good way for storytelling, because it's very light. It also shows a lot of intelligence of putting things together in an unexpected way. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. I think Toronto has a very good comedy scene. And I found this stand-up class at a local comedy club in Toronto called what is it called? Sorry, I forgot the name of the school. Okay, oh my god, what is the name? Let's see. Comedy Bar. The instructor is actually a Toronto comedian. His name is Dylan. Yeah, so far I only took 2 classes, but I think I learned a lot. He basically just walked us through the very basic techniques for humor, like punchline, comparison, one-liner, rule of 3, misdirect. Those are my first time learning those techniques, and I realized that I probably already used some of the techniques, but I never realized it. There are about 10 students in the class. Most of them are working in the creative field, like writer, copywriter, journalist, actor. And then I told them that I am a software engineer. And they really encouraged me that being a software engineer actually adds a lot of unexpected elements to your performance, because you can compare your engineering life to something else. Yeah, this is actually my first time ever hearing others saying that, wow, your career is unique. Because previously I was surrounded by all the other engineers at tech, and I never ever thought my career is unique. And I think what I really liked about this class is the instructor Dylan guided us to do a lot of in-class practice. So I remember in my first class last week, we did the practice of writing lines using this comparison technique. Comparison is basically you compare 2 things that are not relevant in a way that is unexpected. So Dylan asked us to come up with some lines using comparison. So there is a very small stage at the front of the classroom, and each of the students will go to that stage and share their lines. I was at that time really struggling writing this comparison. So all the other students have almost finished and I was still struggling. And then, so this is my notebook. And I think I wrote something like, let's see. I wrote something like, okay, this is my first attempt. Lululemon's rejection letter is like my different color Lululemon hoodies. Dylan was came to me, he looked at my note, he basically guided me to write something better. So he asked me some really good questions. he asked me, what did you feel when you received the rejection letter? I said, oh, well, it's okay. At least they sent me rejection letters. And then he asked, did you receive the rejection letter in email or like mail? I said, yeah, it's in my mailbox. And then I showed the rejection letter to him. And then as I showed this rejection letter to him, I told him, actually, I think maybe they rejected me because I actually didn't have any retail experiences. I work as a software engineer, so maybe the resume was not a good fit. It was like discovering something new. Oh, okay, you can basically say like you are a software engineer, but you are applying for a retail job. There's actually a lot to say here. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I came to the stage for the first time in my life, just in that small classroom. I delivered it. I think it was good. What did I write? I think I write something like getting rejection letters at Lululemon is like explaining to your mom Python, Kubernetes, Golang. She is so proud of you, but she is not going to hire you. Yeah, just came up with something like that. But I think after that class, I suddenly have so many ideas. Yeah, I'm going to share with you a little bit later, but basically, I think Lululemon definitely just becomes a very core part of my comedy lines. Because in the second class, I also wrote a lot of lines about Lululemon. So I'm going to read it to you. So we were practicing this one-liner, and one thing with one-liner is you can write look-like jokes. So basically jokes we assume the notion. So I practiced this look-like jokes. So there's one I wrote. I look like I could build the entire Lululemon app, but I'm not trusted to fold pants in their store. I think that's a funny one. And then there's another one. I look like a Lululemon employee who got fired and no one told her to return her outfit. Yeah, I think that's good. So after my first class, after that inspiration from Dylan, I suddenly got so many ideas. I went back home that night. I basically actually didn't sleep because I was writing my jokes all night. And then the next day, I came up with a 10-minute stand-up script. And then I decided to go to the open mic the following week. So I cut it into 5 minutes. I basically memorized them. So the open mic happens after that comedy class. So after my second comedy class, which was this Tuesday, after the comedy class, I went to that open mic and did my first performance. I think it is very fun, so let's jump into that. Yeah, so my first open mic stand-up experience. So basically this hot mic, open mic thing is pretty simple. There is a bucket, and if you want to perform on the stage, you basically put your name into the bucket, and the host will draw names out of the bucket. Once he gets your name, you go to the stage and perform. Yeah, I put my name on the bucket and it was my time to perform. First time ever. And I went onto the stage and I was like, oh wow. So when I am on the stage, I basically cannot see the audience because they are in the dark. I didn't expect that. I started performing. I think I improvised a lot because I didn't memorize my script word by word. I also forgot one of the most important punchline. Oh my god. Yeah, it's like a very good punchline and I forgot the word. So I came up with something else. Yeah, but basically I think it's very relaxed. I mean, I've done those like very high stressful engineering jobs. I think like this thing is not stressful at all. It's just like very chill. Yeah, I think overall I had a good performance and I had a lot of fun. After this open mic, the host came to me and said, wow, Zoe, a good job. And I told him that this is actually my first time ever performing on the stage. He was maybe a little bit surprised. And we chatted about his first experience on stage, so it was pretty fun. And after that, I also met a couple of people who also performed on the stage. We chatted with each other. Some of them are also immigrants, so they told me that my story really resonated with them. And I told them that I really like their Uber driver story. So yeah, we chatted for a while. Before I left, they told me that don't buy more Lululemon. So I guess this Lululemon story really had an impression on the audience. That is basically my first comedy stand-up experience. I was looking at my recording. I realized that I was very shy. I think there's definitely a lot to improve from there, but I'm so glad I had my first experience. It was very fun. I think I'm going to write more punchlines and try that again next time. Hopefully next time it will be better, and hope you enjoy my first open mic stand-up. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Hello everyone, I'm Zoe. I'm a machine learning engineer and I work on distributed systems that serve millions of users. So last year I applied to work for Lululemon and they said no. The rejection letter says, we decided to go with candidates whose qualifications more closely meet the needs of the teams. I read that line 3 times because I got it 3 times. First, Bloor Street, 2 weeks later, Eaton Center, 2 weeks later, The Well. I think maybe they started talking with each other. And at that time, I genuinely didn't understand. You know, I have a master's degree, I speak 2 languages, and I spent $2,000 on their store last year. And I even put my IELTS score on my resume. You know, when I got that score, I really wanted to tell someone. But who do you brag about an English test score? Nobody cares. So I held onto that for 5 years. Then I was writing my resume, language session, fluent in English. And I thought, this is my moment. And I think the manager looked at my resume, IELTS 8.5. Wait, what is that? Is that a bra size? But honestly, I didn't apply for Lululemon for fun. I quit my job in the US last year to move to Canada. And my plan was to drive from San Francisco to Reno for the first night. 5 hours later, I arrived. The street looked familiar. The navigation app took me to where I started. And I should mention, the navigation app was made by my former employer. I had just quit 5 hours earlier. 5 hours. That's how long it took for them to get revenge. And I'm not saying this is personal, but the app worked fine when I was on payroll. So after a 10 days trip, I finally made it to Toronto. And I needed to go to customs to import my car. And this time, I decided to use a different navigation app. I thought, the competitor can't be worse. Well, actually, the competitor was worse. It took me across the Rainbow Bridge into the United States. It got me deported. So, after 2 hours involuntary trip to the United States, I was back to Canada. And Lululemon rejected me. So, both countries don't want me. At least, Canada said it politely. By the way, actually, my IELTS score got me the Canadian PR. So, it's too late. I'm staying. Canada was too polite to say no twice. I think I just needed to find a job that doesn't need me to drive anywhere. So if any of you need someone to build distributed systems, I am available. But if any of you work at Lululemon, I am very available. My IELTS score is 8.5, by the way. Thank you.